wave your grades at the brave who fight for you. If you don't gain, they fight in vain. Show them what you can do. Show them what you can do. Please show them what you can do. I said, in this parade, please wave your grades at the brave who fight for you. If you don't gain, they fight in vain. Show them what you can do. Show them what you can do. Please show them what you can do. You make this parade a mere charade if you're marching just for fun. Our troops must feel your thanks for real before the marching is done. They know side by side you can match their stride to the drum beat and the brass, but they're not impressed with you unless you can match their stride in class. This may not sound too diplomatic, but I cannot be more emphatic as I tell you, it's problematic when you do less than your best. Especially when it's because you put your brilliance on pause for the mere peer applause it draws from a so-called friend doing less. Quit playing, I'm saying, you know that you are great, and we know it, so show it. Don't make our heroes wait. In this parade, please wave your grades at the brave who fight for you. If you don't gain, they fight in vain. Show them what you can do. Show them what you can do. Please show them what you can do. For those of you who already do the things that make us proud, your nation in appreciation says thanks to you out loud. Your schoolmates should imitate the way you tap your potential. Let me try to convince them why their effort is essential. Our men and women in uniform, before, during, and after Desert Storm, always perform above the norm, anywhere and everywhere on the planet. They need to follow our heroes' lead, but they cannot lead if they cannot read. Allow me, please, to plant this seed. Don't take freedom for granted. I'm serious, I'm furious to see U.S. schools behind. Remove the clatter, it's just a matter of our making up our minds. In this parade, please wave your grades at the brave who fight for you. If you don't gain, they fight in vain. Show them what you can do. Show them what you can do. Please show them what you can do. We believe in you, warriors protect you to do what you must to rise. Please do your part. Please start before another warrior dies. In this parade, please wave your grades at the brave who fight for you. If you don't gain, they fight in vain. Show them what you can do. Show them what you can do. Please show them what you can do. They sacrifice for you. Show them what you can do. Please show them what you can do. Please.
Good afternoon and welcome to Wave Your Grades on KUAW.org, the academic patriotism program that is dedicated to veterans and serious secondary scholars. I am your announcer, DeQuay Wilson. Now, here is our host, Carl Boyd.
Thank you so very, very much. This is Wave Your Grades on another Saturday afternoon, and we have a very special guest with us this afternoon whose name is Joseph Nelson. Before any formal introductions, let me allow those who listen to us, particularly our regular listeners, to find out something about today's first Saturday program that is important. Every Saturday, there is a group of students to whom we refer as the Smart Club. But DeQuay Wilson, it goes beyond just the Smart Club because Valencia Broadus, who is their sponsor, has really reached out to students in the community who grant us with their presence on first Saturdays. Obviously, I was looking forward to an opportunity for that interaction, but I got an a text, I guess an hour and a half or so ago, and they are with their ACT exams and out of town in parishes in Texas, so I get the honor, the privilege to have a single guest this afternoon in the presence of Joseph Nelson, and let me tell you another reason that is a singular privilege this afternoon. It turns out that as well as being a distinguished veteran Brother Nelson is also a candidate with the Kansas City, Missouri School Board. And we here at KUAW.org, a station that was founded by Louis George Walker here at the W.E.B. Du Bois Learning Center, will be, to the degree that it is possible, apolitical. But if not apolitical, nonpartisan political. And it turns out that Kansas City gets an opportunity to hear from you, and it is the responsibility of the station that if there are opposing candidates that we extend the invitation. And so it is that I did extend the invitation to Tanisha Ford, who is also running for the at-large seat, Kansas City, Missouri School District. She is not able to be here with you in person, so I told her that I certainly would read what she emailed me. And it's interesting how God works, DeQuay, because the young people not being here offers enough time to read this and then devote the rest of the program to our in-studio guest. And so it is. April 8th is our election. Municipal bond issues. Grandview has a mayoral race. And in the greater Kansas City school district and a few other districts, there are board candidates. So thanking not only Tanisha Ford for the letter that she wrote, but thanking you, Joseph Nelson, for understanding the responsibility to enjoy the reading. I shall start with that, and then Sister DeQuay Wilson, by the way, DeQuay, whom you just met, is someone to whom I prefer as the peach of the show. She is our producer, engineer, and co-host, the peach of Wave Your Grades every Saturday, 1 o'clock, here on KUAW.org. If there is someone who is listening who has an interest in calling in, our call-in number is 816-599-6893. Wave Your Grades, 816-599-6893. Thanking Tanisha L. Ford for responding to the invitation. Allow me, please, to read these words. Hello, Mr. Boyd. Thank you for this email. My bio is attached. I am currently on the board as an at-large school board member who is seeking re-election and serving 4 more years. Below is a piece that captures my advice, encouragement for the young people on the show. Hello, students and listeners. Thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of today's conversation. Though I can't be there in person, I want you to know how much it means to be invited, because you matter and your journey matters. I'm proud to say I was born and raised right here in Kansas City. I went to school in this district, left for college, and made the intentional choice to come back home, not just to live and work, but to serve, to grow, and now to raise my 2 children in the same school system that shaped me. That wasn't a random decision. It was a commitment to this community and the belief that our young people deserve every opportunity to thrive. For years, I worked with Kaufman Scholars, a college access and persistence program that supported thousands of students, many of whom had similar pathways as you. I've seen what happens when young people are given tools, support, and someone who believes in them. I've seen what's possible, and I see that same potential in you. I also want to acknowledge that your generation is coming of age during incredibly complex times. Social media pressures, mental health struggles, and global challenges are real. You're balancing more than many adults ever had to at your age. And yet, you're still showing up, still trying, still dreaming. That is strength, that is leadership. So here's my encouragement to you. Wave your grades, yes, but also wave your growth. Wave your leadership, your community service, your bounce backs, your progress, all of it matters. 2, your story is powerful, even the parts that don't feel perfect. Don't be afraid of where you've been. That's where your strength is built. Ask for help. There's no weakness in needing support. Smart, strong people know when to learn from others. Take pride in your roots. Whether you stay in Kansas City or leave for a while, don't forget who you are and where you come from. This city has greatness in it, and you're part of that. Be resilient, but don't go it alone. Resilience isn't about being tough all the time. It's about being honest, getting back up, and finding joy in the journey. To me, waving your grades isn't just about schoolwork. It's about waving your purpose, your presence, your power. And I'll leave you with a quote from Dr. Maya Angelou that reminds me of so many of the young people I've been privileged to meet. Quote, "I can be changed by what happens to me, but I refuse to be reduced by it." Let that be your reminder. You are more than your obstacles. You are rising, you are leading, you are the hope of our neighborhoods and the future of our nation. With love, belief, and Kansas City pride, Tanisha Ford, once again, at-large candidate for the Kansas City, Missouri School Board. Now, we do have the opportunity to introduce Mr. Joseph Nelson, and we have talked about the fact that Wave Your Grades is to honor veterans and to motivate students. So you are a veteran, and it happens that you are also a candidate at large for the Kansas City, Missouri School Board. Thank you so much for coming. As a matter of fact, we were supposed to have done this program last week, and I had a death in the family. But we're here today. So with all of that, and appreciate your patience, tell us something about Brother Joseph Nelson.
Sure. So I'm originally from New York. I'm the proud son of first-generation immigrants. My parents came from Jamaica. They moved to New York, seeking a better life, like most immigrant families. And I went to the Naval Academy at 17. So we'll talk about some truths later. But so in order to join the military, you have to be 18.
Yes, sir.
And if you're 17, you need a waiver, right? And you need your parents to sign off.
Okay.
So I'm going to get in trouble. Sorry, Mom. So I was like, hey, Mom, I need this permission slip signed for the school trip. And that's how I went to the Naval Academy. So it was a 4-year school trip.
Now, this
and
is very
a 5-year commitment. But it was technically a school trip. I don't know. But I went to the Naval Academy at 17. Yep.
You know what? In as much as he is our singular guest today, I'm going to take some liberties with the time. I got time to tell you a brief story because you said, sorry, Mom, I told on you. Let me tell you what is interesting about that. I was 4 years old when I started kindergarten. I was supposed to be 5. My birthday is March 3rd. My mother told me to tell them that my birthday was November 3rd. For several years in my early childhood life, I celebrated 2 birthdays a year. And when I was in 4th grade, 8 years old, they caught up with me. So
they caught you.
They couldn't give me a double promotion.
Late.
They were going to give me a double
It's too late now.
promotion. So we share that same kind of exaggeration.
All right. Say. Well, since we got some good stories going, I'll tell you about how I have 2 wedding dates, 1 wedding, 1 wife, 2 wedding dates, but we'll save that if we got time at the
Now
end.
this is very interesting. This is about
It's
to
a good
be.
story. Yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong
Listen.
with initiating. Louis George Walker, by the way, is our founder. He is the person responsible for KUAW.org. We had no idea that we might launch a serial today, a soap opera on on your station.
I try to stay drama free. It doesn't always work, but
I
try
do
to
understand,
keep it,
but
keep it
now,
down.
on a
So,
serious note, in as much as we are Wave Your Grades and dedicated to veterans, so you served in the Navy.
mhm.
Boy, I'm too old. I've got a story for everything.
Let's-
My wife and I do not have biological children, but our adopted daughter, whom I gave away, as a matter of fact, when she got married at Annapolis, is
we have talked about this. Yeah,
yes,
I
sir.
remember this.
Alicia Malloy is her name, and she's the first black female dean of the United States Naval Academy Preparatory School.
Yep.
So she's in Rhode Island, but we did her wedding, obviously,
Down
in
in
Annapolis.
Annapolis, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm
So-
very familiar with naps in Rhode Island.
Okay.
Very
Now, is he
familiar.
close enough to the microphone? He talks softer than I do.
I do. Sometimes.
Well, okay. Share some of your background with us.
So yeah, joined the Navy. Did most of my time, if not the bulk of my time, overseas, and a stint in the sandbox as a reservist. So I've done a myriad of
Now,
roles.
Sandbox stands for.
Sandbox, so anything in the desert, right? So
Ooh.
Bahrain, Saudi Arabia.
Yes, sir.
Anything after 9/11. Actually, I did bring notes, so I should probably pay attention to those. I joined the class of 2006 at the Naval Academy, which was the first class to join after the attacks of 9/11.
Ooh.
And I lived in New York. I was in New Jersey. My mom worked in New York 30 plus years as a nurse. We saw the towers fall. We saw the smoke on the way home from high school, and we saw it for weeks later.
My God.
We knew people that were over there. We knew parents that were over there.
Yes.
We knew firefighters that were over there, and first responders.
Yes.
So fast forward, I'm like, hey, Mom, here's this permission slip for a school trip. And here I am joining the first class to go to the academy, any of the academies,
Yes.
for the first time going into wartime. The last class that did that was 1944 after Pearl Harbor.
Now, let me ask about your motivation, because it sounds very much to me like this was a patriotic forwarding of the development of Joseph Nelson at a very young age. How were you motivated to enlist? Was it
So I'm gonna stave off some jokes because I hear some folks out in some veterans are like, well, he was an officer, so he can't claim the enlisted title. So I was an officer.
Okay.
So I didn't enlist,
Okay.
but I went to the academy, and my motivation for that was twofold. First I was the oldest of 3 children, and you got a strong working family. If you know anything about Jamaicans, they have 10 jobs. My mom retired 4 times. Grandma
Wow.
retired 5.
Okay.
My dad said he's retired, and he still works 5 days a week. So make that make sense to you. But I didn't want to have to force my parents to pay for college for me,
Okay.
because I had a brother and sister coming after me
Yes.
that, and so based on the opportunities that I had afforded to me, based on my academic record
Okay.
and my well-roundedness in extracurriculars, in student leadership organizations, and in sports, I took that opportunity to say, hey, debt-free. And not only debt-free, you got a guaranteed job at the end, and you can do whatever you want. And so that's a whole, that actually shapes a lot of the things that I talk about in terms of things I'd like to see the board and education.
Yes.
I really don't want it to just be about Kansas City public schools, right? It's about that, but it's more than that. We're at such a critical time. The Department of Education is going away. Full stop. The state of Missouri is still in the governor's budget right now. And the last check, we were $300 million short of what we usually put into education.
Okay.
Right? And so we're at a very critical time. So you're talking about funding changes, but you're also talking about a lot of policy changes, right? And so a lot of control that was spread out across different branches and levels of government is suddenly coming all the way back down to the local level. And so you need to be able to navigate that swiftly and quickly. And so I never envisioned myself being a politician. I still am. Even though I've got my first official scandal, so and I think I've graduated to official politician, but I'm a tactician. I don't navigate anything outside of the solution to the problem.
Yes.
And so right now we have academic outcomes that do not set up our students for life success. And that can look a lot of different ways. You can have students that become entrepreneurs, right? And you can't necessarily teach someone to be an entrepreneur, but you can teach entrepreneurial skills, right? And you can take that and create your own business, or you can take that and go into the corporate world with an entrepreneurial mindset and change the game in a lot of industries. You can do the trades. A lot of folks don't realize the trades that have gotten a bad reputation for a long time because everybody said, you got to go to college, you got to go to college, you got to go to college.
Right.
And hey, you fast forward, you went to college, you have $300,000 in debt, but your job pays you $34,000 a year. So that doesn't make sense, right? As far as success, I'm sorry. So that's another route, right? But the trades, most tradespeople are making 200, 300K, running their own businesses, choosing their own hours, and the idea that the trades are not technical couldn't be further from the truth. Aside from the fact that a lot of the apprenticeship programs that are out here, including here in Kansas City, give you credit hours in college. So a lot of the apprentices, depending on, you know, which union you're working with, you take a few more classes and you've got an associate's. You take a few more classes, you've got a full 4-year degree in less than 4 years.
Yes.
And you have a skill set that nobody else has. Look at what happened in the pandemic, right? And the pandemic did a lot of things to the country, to the nation, particularly in education, but also in a lot of the professions. Look at how many lawyers, business people, people with all sorts of degrees, masters, doctorates, that were out of work and doing gig economy, where they're, you know, creating wares at home, doing online things, or they were working at fast food restaurants because no one was hiring for the credentials they had. But look at the folks that were driving trucks, which is a skill, right? Look at the folks that were building things. Look at the electricians. They didn't miss a day's of work. They didn't miss any work.
Now, you present a few things. And before I ask one question about that, let me say that DeQuay Wilson is indeed the announcer and producer, the engineer, also co-host. So please, when I'm looking his way, I don't see when you want to chime in, so please do.
Yeah.
But a number of things are going on, and when we talk about telling stories, bringing up things about education, I think that I might have shared with you that I started teaching in 1964. So when I think about what was traditional school, what was expected of a school, what public schools meant, K through 12, while we did not serve to the degree that we might have or should have. And I mentioned I'm on the board of the Brown versus Topeka. When we look at the evolution of things, and you began to talk about the removal, can you imagine, of the Department of Education? Had you said that to me even during the pandemic when things were up in the air, I might have smirked. I wouldn't have laughed, but I could not imagine that removal. From Brother Nelson's standpoint, the evolution of schools from there to here and where we're going requires much of anybody who is involved with something called education, most particularly board members.
Yeah.
Could you have anticipated, and what is very crucial to now possibly getting a Department of Education back, or how we deal with it in the throes of this peculiar time that we're living in now?
I really love that question. Am I speaking loudly enough? All right. I really love that question.
Yes, sir.
I know when we first talked, I wanted to bring in a lot of history, so I'm going to tie it in.
Sure.
So if I might get off track and I might get in trouble, but I will try to keep it. So we need to come back to the history part. The nature of work is changing, and not. Let me rephrase that. The nature of work has already changed. The nature of higher education has already changed, but public schools and public education has not pivoted, or not pivoted quickly enough to meet the demands of today's workforce. Now, that's the first part. The way that I look at situations, again, I'm a tactician, not a politician. We're talking about, could we have foreseen this? Guess what? The United States, and I'm sure you know this, but for the folks that don't know, the United States military has a plan for everything.
Yes, sir.
Friend or foe.
Yes, sir.
If Canada, Canada, because we like them. They don't like us right now.
Not right now.
But if they decided to invade tomorrow, we don't have to think about what we're going to do.
Yes, sir.
We have a plan on the shelf, version 1, 2, 3 Alpha,
Yes, sir.
3 Bravo.
Yes, sir.
We have a plan for every possible situation, and we practice those plans,
Yes,
right?
sir.
Friend or foe. That's a lot of what the military does in terms of training. Army units, Air Force units, Navy units. So there's always real world operations going on, always, right? I'm a student of history, but I'm also a student of war, right? Because you have to be both in order to go into harm's way and come out with your mind intact.
Yes, indeed.
And
Yes, indeed.
with successful outcomes.
Right.
My biggest fear when I was in service was to lose a sailor. That was my absolute biggest fear,
Yes, sir.
because when you go to any of the service academies, and they'll weed you out real fast. And day one, after they not beat you, they sternly welcome you to your new accommodations.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
They say, hey, look to your left, look to your right. You probably won't see them here in a few months. And that happens like clockwork. I know you want to jump. So the story I want to say is that one of those other, very early on, they say, hey, if you make a decision, right, whether you wrote it down, well, now you can email it. Apparently now we can text things. But if you make a decision that costs somebody their life, right, wartime or not,
Yes.
you're going to write that letter to that mom and dad.
Yes, sir. Now, one of the things that you did when you were saying something to which you were referring, that you looked and said you would know that, pointing at me.
Yeah.
So I want to be very careful to repeat that I am a civilian. My oldest brother was a Marine. Second to him was an airman, and then a soldier. And they saw to it that I was the first to graduate from college. So I don't want to make it appear that I have a background that I do not have. So as much as I do indeed appreciate the military, as a matter of fact, our program, Stutes for Boots, has as the subtitle, American Students Striving for Excellence in honor of our troops. And the idea behind that is to say that those who serve deserve the best.
Absolutely.
And should be able to come home to thriving school districts, whether they are private and or public. And of course, as a matter of fact, speak to this for us.
Sure.
This whole evolution of the definition of something called ABC has really changed, and I'll tell you what I mean and ask you to speak to it for me. When I was teaching, it was just understood that most of the students would go to a public school. That was just understood. And when there was a movement towards the private school before charter schools, oftentimes, unfortunately, it had to do with prejudice.
Absolutely.
It had to do with a need for some to maintain what was considered the status quo before I started teaching. Whereas now, if you talk about in-person, if you talk about virtual, if you talk about a combination of charter, public, all of those different things, how do we maintain in a way that competes with, and I was blessed to speak to educators in Beijing, People's Republic of China in 1997, but working with foreign lands and all of that, how do we keep not just America's quality of schooling, but attention to curricula that help us compete and maintain a progressive forward movement with all of these different variations of something called school?
Absolutely. You hit so many topics, and when you talk about disparities, we'll call them, in the level of investment and the different types of schools, my thought on all of that is that no matter what we call them,
Yes.
the outcome that we produce is the most important part. And this is part and parcel with a lot of the things that I've been talking to the community about. It doesn't matter. I don't have a stance on public versus private versus charter.
It's not versus.
And here's why.
Okay.
Why are we in competition for education? Education should be high standards across the board, regardless of whatever umbrella or title or name you put on top of that. Building, school, program, it does not matter as long as the people that are coming out are better for it, period. And so what we need to do is, however we iterate on this, we need to work together on it, right? And I commend the school board now, right? We're doing a historic bond.
Good.
And for quite a long time, you had this narrative of charters versus public schools, right? But a lot of folks don't know the school district sponsors several charters within the district.
That's right.
Why are we in competition?
That's right.
Right? If you exit a charter for whatever reason, guess where you're going to go to school? Public schools. Why are we in competition? Now, what I will say is we don't need to be in competition, one, because the outcomes aren't going to be better for it, but why do I need a marketing budget for my school? Because that's money coming out of the classroom. So the narrative of this school versus that type of school and this.
Yes, sir.
And I want to come back to the curriculum because that's a whole other topic.
Yes.
We have to stop it.
Let me ask you to hold on for just a moment for our mid-program break, and we'll come back to this point because that's, I think, very important. Once again, here is KUAW Wilson.
Reminding our 7th through 12th grade students that you can win a monetary award from our sponsoring organization. Yes, we do say organization on purpose, with purpose, Stutes for Boots. Your essay title will be Heroes You Know You Didn't Know Were Heroes. Your content will identify a veteran at your school who can be absolutely anyone: teacher, custodian, administrator, bus driver, absolutely anyone. If your essay is chosen and submitted by an adult who gives you permission to read it on this Wave Your Grades program, you will be awarded a monetary prize. Please send entry or inquiry to academicpatriotism@gmail.com. That is academicpatriotism@gmail.com. Now back to our host, Carl Boyd.
Thank you so very, very much, KUAW Wilson. You made me think of something, and here again, age. You are younger than I.
In theory.
But when you mention outcomes,
Yeah.
I am old enough to have been an educator when we talked about outcomes-based education.
Yep.
That's what we're dealing with. So as we look at the various titles for the various forms of school, you said you were going to look at what I was mentioning when I talked about curricula.
So curricula is the bedrock of teaching, right?
My God.
You've been in the classroom.
Yes, sir.
I've been in the classroom, not as a formal educator. I did start working on that, but another story for another time. We talked about the pace and the nature of work. Education, some certain parts of education have not kept up. Think about higher education, particularly, your colleges, your universities, research centers. In order to be a professor there, you have to attain so many years, you have to get tenure, you have to produce so many papers. And then part of what you're doing, and all of our school teachers do, and they learn this when they're becoming academics, is about creating your lesson plans and understanding and building your curriculum, right? The pace of technology alone, there's the number of computer science majors and the number of students that are going to college is dropping drastically. Schools are panicking because they can't keep the lights on because they don't have enough students enrolling. Now, part of that is because the students can't afford to go anymore because the tuition keeps going up. The other part of that is all of our students are not qualified enough to get into these institutions, right? So even if you're able to get into the institution, you're spending your first year, maybe 2, doing remedial classes that you should have learned in your previous school. Separate from that, I touched on computer science really to look at technology, the pace of technology, coding. There's a lot of boot camps. There's a lot here in Kansas City. You're talking 9 to 12 weeks to teach someone coding in maybe 2 or 3 different languages that they could go out and get a job, right? AWS has one program that's about a year and a half. If you're able to complete that program, you're making $200K or more, right? That's not traditional school. Now, why are these programs thriving? Because by the time a professor at a 4-year college submits his curriculum for somebody else to review, and it comes back, and they get the books, and they get the students enrolled, and he starts teaching, by the time you finish that semester, everything you taught is out of date. So the schools need to keep up, and that's higher education. We already are seeing a huge gap from the pandemic and a huge gap just in general in terms of our outcomes, right? But we're doubling down on the old methods. We need to adapt, and we cannot afford to wait another year, another 6 months. So I mentioned the plans that we had, right?
Yes.
As a military person, right?
Yes.
Strategy, right? So we talk about the Department of Education closing, the school board, right? The district, and it's not just a KCPS thing. Every district across the country should already have a plan of, if this happens, where are we going to get the money from, right? If this happens, where are we going to send our students that need extra mental health,
Yes.
extra care because they're in housing unstable situations,
I mean, just
English language, like they're like the list is
just school lunch
through,
I
and
mean, just,
school lunch, school
I mean,
breakfast.
My goodness.
The state of Missouri got the money for a school breakfast. It was approved. You know when that money, because over the summer, a lot of students that only get their meals from school, or they get the majority of their healthiest meals from school,
Yes.
right? There was money, there was legislation, there was all these things put into place to make sure that over the summer, the students could go to school and get their meals. You know when that money arrived? In September. The kids are already hungry. We done missed the ball.
Let me tell you something that you made me think of that is very important. And oftentimes, DeQuay will let you know that our conversations don't always revolve singularly around the military. But let me say how you've made me think of it within the context of, for instance, curricula, as well as how we go about achieving whatever that end is, military. I think of being purpose-driven. When you are in training, you are not in training as an exercise on how to stimulate your mind. You are in training as an exercise on how to accomplish particular goals that make a difference as to whether or not somebody will survive. This is extremely important. And I don't mind saying to you or whomever that I feel the same way about education, that education has a purpose. We're not just trying to show how smart we are to be able to solve some problems, but we are in the throes of an evolutionary period in education where what is being taught and how it is being learned, that part of education with which you are familiar, with which Tanisha Ford is familiar, with which Sister Collier is familiar, is that the academic part of it must lead to the application part. Well, you seem to be with
we are we are in sync. Yes.
Go right ahead.
So I'm gonna jump back to this history part.
Yes, sir.
Right, because if we cannot learn, and I'm sure you've heard this quote, and many people that are listening have heard this quote, you cannot. History will repeat itself.
Yes.
Right. You have to learn from our past mistakes, and you have to know your history. Right. And there's pick your quote. Right.
Yeah,
the theme is the same. You have to know where you're coming from.
Yeah.
And so the history lesson, and what I wanted to talk about when we first had talked about this, like, I would love to talk about the military and education and inspiring students. Hear it from me directly, students. I wanted to talk about, and the question I wrote to myself when I started, refreshing my brain on the research, what is it like to fight for a country that hates you?
Now that is rough.
Think about that.
That is
What
rough.
is it like to fight for a country that hates you? Now, I'll go to my military experiences, and I'll say that, is it better than what it used to be? Absolutely. Right? Are mostly all of the different options open to everyone? In theory, yes. But I mentioned to you, having had the opportunity to meet some of these heroes, these past veterans.
Yes, sir.
That endured far worse than anything I've ever faced. And so whenever I was challenged and in a dark place, wondering how I was going to continue, I would look at these stories, right? So you'd look at stories of the Tuskegee Airmen, right? The Harlem Hellfighters, right? Let's bring it back closer to home. The Buffalo Soldiers, 9th and 10th Cavalry, where we have a great display just down the street at Bruce R. Watkins
Yes, sir.
Heritage Center, right?
As a matter of fact, they're celebrating that this afternoon.
Yeah, and if you go out up to Fort Leavenworth and you go even a little bit further west, you can see some of these places where they were, right? Now, let's bring it back to Kansas City a little bit. The movie Devotion talked about Jesse Brown, the first black naval aviator. His grandson is a member of Omega Psi Phi Beta Omega chapter
Is that right?
here in Kansas City.
Yes, indeed.
Right. So before that movie came out, we were learning from him firsthand, his grandson, about the challenges that he had to face. And not everything made the movie, folks, because not everything is pretty in Hollywood.
Yes, sir.
Right.
I can imagine that.
Now let's talk about the Centennial 7, right? That's one that doesn't come up a lot.
Now, I'm not familiar with the Centennial 7.
Exactly. They didn't make a movie about him yet, but they will.
Okay.
So the Centennial 7, the first black submarine commanders, right? So the first one is the first black submarine commander, 1983.
Ooh, that recent.
That recent.
The first.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until 1983.
1983. Here's another anecdote for you. So those were the 7 that made it the first time.
Mm-hmm.
When do you think women were allowed to attend the service academies? The service academies being West Point, Naval Academy, Coast Guard Academy, Air Force Academy. Just throwing in there, the Naval Academy has the Commander-in-Chief's trophy at the moment, so you know which one is the best. But when do you think women were allowed to attend the service academies? The first graduating class for any woman in any of the academies, 1980.
Wow.
Now, you think, oh, what a milestone. No. Way overdue. But then what happened when they graduated, they were restricted from about every profession you could have. So you have a lot of folks that I know personally that are captains, right? You can't put on a star if you don't have certain experiences and credentials behind your name. But they were not allowed to do that. They were not allowed to get certain qualifications because they were restricted to administrative roles. So yeah, we were breaking barriers, but there's always something behind the scenes. And so to the students, before I forget, to the students, there are people that fought and died to preserve democracy in this country. There are people in harm's way right now, friends of mine. I've lost friends to make sure that you can go to school. If they can go into harm's way to make sure that no one is bothering you as you walk to class, I think it's important enough that you pay attention and you do your homework, which I learned is not a thing anymore. Don't worry, it'll come back. It's a small effort, but understand that there are people that are fighting for you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I do have a question really quick because we are getting close to the end of the hour. I know the focus is on preparing children or preparing our youth, preparing our students for the future for the changing landscape of this country. But again, you made the statement earlier, history repeats itself when you do not know it, which is true. So with that being said, with that thought in mind, how do we approach, when you think about the way education is going, and now with it being, with the abolishment of the Department of Education, and education now being turned over to the states, and the states being in charge of how we are educating our students, and not everyone across the country agrees in teaching accuracy in history. How do we approach an accurate historical account of our country so that our youth can be better prepared, not just with the changing of the landscape, the changing of technology, but also with the knowledge of what has happened, what could happen again. How do we prepare our students wholly to be prepared to present, to move forward for the future?
I hear everything you're saying. I think we need to have a part 2 to this conversation.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But
Yes, sir.
what we're talking about, the outcomes, right? And so when we were not, and let's jump back to all the different flavors of school that we have now.
Yes.
Before schools were desegregated, you had one flavor of school, and that was public schools. Full stop.
Yes.
We desegregate the schools. We say everybody deserves an education. We treat everybody like a full citizen, regardless of the color of their skin. And now we have 50 different types of schools that you can attend.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter, in my opinion. Here's why. Because when we couldn't go to school before, that didn't mean we didn't know how to learn.
That's right.
When we couldn't go to the schools that we wanted to go to, or we had to be bused across town, or we had to go to schools that were subpar, because I went to one of those schools,
Yes.
right? This is personal for me.
Wow.
The answer to your question is the community takes over, like they should now. The public schools belong to the public, period. So when we're talking about the accuracy of learning about our communities, our history, right, there's this thing that I know it's still around. It's called Sunday school. And you didn't just learn Bible verses, you learned history.
Right.
And we learned our history. And so guess what? If we want to change the names of the title and books and curriculum, that's a whole other fight, right? What can be put in the books, who can approve the books, that's a whole other fight. But guess what? I'm not worried about it, because just down the hall here, just down the hall, Sister Janae is running Black History Saturdays.
Right.
Right here.
And we are at the W.E.B. Du Bois Learning Center.
So anybody can tell me anything about we're going to no more DEI. Okay. I still have the internet. I still have my elders that I could talk to. I still have my faith community all over. You know how strong the faith community is in Kansas City? Historically strong.
Absolutely.
To this day, people from other countries come here to study
Yes,
Kansas City.
Before you go on, let me ask Louis George Walker to make our standard announcement on how this program can be accessed, because you'll want to pass that on to someone who might want to retrieve what we've done. So here's the gentleman who is the founder of KUAW.org, Louis George.
All right.
Walker.
I'd like to thank you, and thank you for this interesting interview that's going on right now. But you're listening to KUAW Radio, Kansas City's global community radio station. And you can listen to us on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, and Twitch. You can also pick us up online on Get Me Radio, our online radio bot, on Tuner and Tune In. If you have a smart speaker, you can also go to tell your smart speaker, rather, to play KUAW Radio. If you have an Amazon or a Google, you mention KUAW Radio, it will find it for you. So we want to thank you, want you to continue to listen, and also you can pick up rebroadcasts of this show on YouTube at any time.
Thank you so very, very much. And Louis George Walker is a font of information, not just about technology, but also from an education sociological standpoint, understands from the roots, and that is social, that's academic, that's educational. But from a technical standpoint, How often do you do robotics competitions and those kinds of things?
I'm glad you brought it up because I was going to bring it up here. You didn't bring it up.
We have a class of students up there now learning to fly drones. That's why I was upstairs. So we're hoping to put together a drone racing team so that our kids can get out there and learn the career of the future.
All right. No. You can't run away yet. See, you thought you were interviewing me, but now I'm going to interview you, right? So talk about drone racing.
Yes.
Tell me why we don't have a drone racing team at every one of our high schools here in Kansas City.
Yes, and that's what we need to have because a lot of times the students want it, same way with robotics, but they have to find a teacher, you have to find the people and the community to get behind the robotics teams because we've had robot teams come here from Adrian, Missouri, from Omaha, Nebraska, with parents coming with them. You have to have all that support, that community with them. We were at a robotics competition in Omaha, and I saw a charter bus pull up from Detroit, Michigan. And those kids got out of there, and they had won a national championship learning at a community center in Detroit. They had a black engineer that used to work for General Motors that started training them, and they won a national championship.
Well, let me just say this to you. You were outside of this studio when someone else said community driven.
Yes.
So this is not coincidental. And this helps DeQuay and Carl to understand the brilliance that we are privileged to have shared with us by these two gentlemen just on this particular occasion. But as was mentioned, Brother Nelson, there has to be a part two.
Yeah.
But that community orientation,
Absolutely.
let me tell you this, we are near the end of the program and would like very much for you to make sure that you give us something that you didn't want to open the car door and say, oh, I forgot this. And please, some summary remarks before DeQuay announces the close of another episode. Here is Joseph Nelson.
So we are at a crossroads, not just here in Kansas City, but across the country.
Yes, sir.
And I will tell you my number one goal for running for public office, an unpaid office, by the way, was not to win the seat. And I see your eyes perked up.
Yes.
My number one goal was to make sure we had a historic turnout for an April election after what happened in November. Because if you're happy about what happened in November, guess what? You already know you need to vote all the time.
My God.
And if you're not happy about what happened in November, guess what? You need to come out and vote. We vote 3 to 4 times every year. Do you know what the average turnout for an April election was in the last decade? 7%. So when we talk about the things that we're not happy with about what's going on in this rich, historic city, understand that we opted out. So if I say anything to anybody, the polls are open, and they will be open on Election Day.
Yes, indeed.
Get out and vote. I don't care who you vote for.
And by the way, I'm sorry because of the time. Contact information.
Nelson for KCPS.com, NelsonforKCPS.org. If you want to email me, NelsonKCPS@gmail.com. And if you want to text me, emphasis on text, 646-764-1282.
Thank you so very, very much. Appreciate our candidate and military expert as well as a veteran. God bless you. Thank you so much for being with us today. Here is Sister DeQuay Wilson.
I would like to thank our guests and our listeners and viewers for joining us on your Stutes for Boots Wave Your Grades program. We do come to you live every single Saturday from 1 until 2 p.m. Central Standard Time from the W.E.B. Du Bois Learning Center right here in Kansas City, Missouri. I am your announcer, DeQuay Wilson. Now, our host will close with either Carl's commentary on academic patriotism or his daily message for students in honor of our veterans from his book, Morning Messages.
To students across the USA, your Stoots Boots message for this day, April 5th. Respect their boots with your books. Respect their boots with your books. Thank you so very, very much, Joseph Nelson. You have heard from DeQuay Wilson, our Peach.
That's an official title, by the way.
There you go. My name is Carl Boyd. Gracious God and wonderful Wanda. I'm on my way home.